um, accept the invite to record, um, and then we'll kind of proceed. So, want to welcome everyone first to the 2020 Social Science Interdisciplinary Consortium Conference. This is our first annual go around, so you're getting in on the ground floor here. Very glad to see everyone here in attendance this morning. First, wanted to get started by thanking everyone who participated in the organization and creation of the conference, from everyone on the executive committee, some of whom are here, some of whom aren't. Dr. Cheryl Hartman, Dr. Stephanie Spars, Dr. Tony Cruz, Dr. David Posthumus, Dr. Louisa Roberts, and Dr. Sage Kalmelis. As well for everyone who served on the submissions committee, including all of those who are aforementioned, and Miss Shelby Torstensen, and then of course those who are on the program committee, who included members of the sociology club at LSU, so including Miss Shelby Torstensen, Miss Diana Eigner, Miss Kyra Liberto, Miss Hannah Smith, Mr. Nicola Zizik, and Mr. John Lefferts. And then of course, everyone who encompassed the Committee on Undergraduate Students. These were all your fellow students, or our students at USD, all members of the Sociology Club. Lots of effort there. Just all a lot of good work went into this, and for that, I thank all of you in your assistance in making this possible. And of course, general thanks to the sociology department at USD for all of their efforts in assisting me in organizing this together. This particular conference was an idea that came to me in order to recognize students from all walks at USD, because oftentimes you generally see this type of a conference just be maybe a couple of juniors, but mainly seniors and faculty. And I thought, well, let's recognize all forms of research at USD, from the fully developed to those that are a bit less developed but no less worthy of note. And a special thank you I want to extend to Dr. Sage Kalmelis for her assistance in the graphical depictions present in the program, as well as organization of the overall schedule. So wanted to make sure that kept my remarks brief in case there were any comments or questions that anyone happened to have. Just to make sure that we had enough lead time going into this. For the presenters, you're going to want to make sure that one of you has either your PowerPoint presentation or your poster available, because we'll be doing a screen share. Of course, only one person should be trying to share their screen at a time. I've tentatively enabled the ability for everyone here to share, but please don't try to all share at once. Zoom will not like that, and I don't want to try to figure out how much Zoom is willing to put up with today. It's already being very understanding of the overall situation. Now, of course, I want to also make sure that everyone here is aware that this will not be the only conference of its variety that will be taking place over the span of the next academic year. The second annual conference will take place next semester. Tentative date is set for April 1st, so that date is certainly subject to change due to circumstances. And I know that it seems a little strange that the second annual conference would come in the very next semester, but this was more or less our trial run of this conference for a formal run and yearly rollout to take place every spring moving forward. So I also, again, want to thank everyone here for being willing to participate in this initial endeavor. I know that it was a lot of work, particularly during these very trying times that we have here in 2020, with the vid just kind of everywhere existing in the ether, and being particularly troublesome here in South Dakota. But of course, I know that some of you are, at least I know for sure one of you, I believe, is in Minnesota, so slightly removed. And I'm not sure, of course, where everyone else is at here. But I certainly want to leave time for any questions or comments that individuals might have for the good of the order. So please do feel free to share any thoughts that you have, or suggestions that you might have for things that you'd like to see, for this moving forward. Don't everybody go at once. Space yourselves. Well, given that we have some amount of deafening silence, and I feel like it would be a little apropos to fill it with Jeopardy music, which is my music of choice to fill deafening silence with. I'm going to just briefly go through the schedule to make sure that everyone's aware of how things are going to be conducted. So every session is titled. So the first session that we're going to have today, aside from, of course, the welcome session here, is going to be the social science and culture session, followed by an hour break. That break may be infringed into, but that is precisely the purpose of that break, is for it, if necessary, to be infringed into. That way we're not having any overlaps. Then we'll come back for social science and social structure, then have, particularly given what's been going on with COVID, I wanted to make sure that I gave everyone outlets to be able to socialize through this event if they so choose. So there will be a shared dinner session, followed by the evening session with social science and medicine. And that has a type of presentation in it that I have never seen at a conference before, and I'm particularly interested in seeing how it goes. It will be a D&D one-shot academically oriented presentation, which I think is relatively interesting, at least in some ways. And then, of course, at the end, we will have a social. Like I said in my multiple emails, apologies for all the emails that you've received over the past day or so. Want to make sure that I emphasize you are not obligated to attend for the whole conference. I do request that you at least make it through the entire session that you're in. So when your presentation is over, please do not run away. Please do show, of course, everyone the courtesy of remaining through the whole session. When all presenters in each session are complete, for example, when everyone is who's within the social science and culture session has finished with their presentations, we will have a Q&A to fill the rest of the time in the session. And if there are questions that necessitate going over that time, then that will be accommodated for accordingly. Does anyone have any questions regarding how the conference will flow, or any concerns? I do see your kitchen, Emily. It does look like a good kitchen. I like how so many of my colleagues have such nice looking backgrounds, and I'm sitting here with my janky whiteboard behind me, but it's okay, right?
Hi, Tony. It's okay.
Okay, so just so it's clear, the presentations will take place. I do not know why your camera is off. But if we are to guess, you are, let's see, you are learning the ins and outs of the Macarena, and you don't want to show anyone how good you are at it until you feel sufficiently expert. Is that accurate? Okay, so you will do that during your presentation. Another reason to come back this evening for the evening presentations then. The Macarena a la Dr. Kamelis. Okay, got it. All right, yes, so the presentations will, yes, and to keep it shuffling, of course. The presentations will take place in the order that they're listed in the program. It is possible that some presentations may end up having to get shuffled around a little bit due to well, life occurring. But that is indeed what the breaks are for, is to accommodate for all of that. All right, so our first presenters for today, just to make sure that they're aware that they are going first, we have Kenley Cotter, Laura Larson, Caitlin Sandstedt, and Kira Janos, all from USD, all from different departments at USD, something to be noted, a very diverse group that we have here. Students representing the departments of media journalism, nursing, anthropology, and health sciences, all in a group together here this morning. You will be presenting first this morning, so do make sure that you have your presentation ready. And of course, as already listed in the description for this conference, please do try to make sure that you keep your presentation between 5 and 15 minutes. We'll have some understanding for going slightly over, but ideally not 15 minutes over. The ones that I have to stare at the most directly regarding the 15 minutes over are our academics presenting today. As we are known to be a little bit long-winded. Well, actually, no, that's just me.
So is it strictly like 10 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for question, or can we cheat just a little bit and dip into our question time?
Oh, so questions aren't going to infringe on your presentation time. So you have anywhere from full 5 to full 15 minutes for your presentation. If you need to go over a little bit, that'll be accommodated to within reason. Like I said, 5 minutes we can probably work with. 15 minutes would be a little bit much. Filibustering, yes. Please do not filibuster the conference. Leave that to the halls of Congress. So the first group is welcome to start screen sharing whenever they're ready, more or less. Doesn't have to be right on one. And ideally, everything will work perfectly, because that's how the COVID era works, right? Technology works perfectly when you want it to. Perhaps saying a prayer to the Zoom gods will also be in order.
Does someone want to share, or I can? I've just never done it before, so.
So there's a green button at the bottom, which will be share screen. At least there should be a green button at the bottom.
Is someone else able to? I can't figure it out.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep, that's good.
Perfect.
Okay, can we begin?
Yes, please do, if you don't mind, begin with a brief introduction.
Okay. So for our presentation, we wanted to tackle the topic of difficulties of communicating online because we're all very aware of that for this semester with COVID. So to start, the difficulties of communicating online present themselves in many aspects of our lives. Not being able to see physical cues, information being taken into the wrong context, and there are difficulties in having an efficient conversation online. So for physical cues, that would include not being able to see eye contact, hand gestures, body language, and other social cues that go along with being face-to-face. For information being taken into the wrong context, that could simply be just having the wrong punctuation in a message could skew what the receiver's perception of your message entails. Individuals are put at a disadvantage when face-to-face communication is not present. Information becomes skewed when you cannot rely on someone else's body language through via technology. Communication is a part of everybody's day-to-day life, which is why we wanted to dive into this topic.
My name's Kirianos, but I just want to talk about the kind of background of online communication. So with that, we wanted to talk about the creation of the internet because online communication is referred to as computer-mediated communication. So that began in the 1960s with an internet prototype. So that was called the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network, but the acronym for that was ARPANET. The modern internet that we know today with the network of networks was invented in 1983. And obviously since then, technology has developed. So now we're able to access the internet through more than just a computer. We can do it through smartphones and even smart watches, for example. And with so many more forms of online access, there's a lot of different online communication formats. So we could do that through email, instant messaging, there's different forums, blog posts, there's social media, of course, how could you forget, that's everywhere. And then we also have video calls such as Zoom, Skype, or FaceTime for some of those examples there. And as we all know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, there are many that are relying on online communication as the main source of interaction between people, just to keep everybody safe there. But so many aspects of our life have been used to virtual platforms. And so one of these aspects is for school. And online schooling does allow students to continue their work while being distanced and safe, but there definitely are some downfalls to that.
So for both students and teachers, this transition has been very difficult. I would say especially last spring when we all were kind of thrown into that last minute. How an instructor chooses to format their class is detrimental to the students' outcomes and learning. So some classes are hard to switch from, an in-person format to that online format. Online learning makes it more difficult to engage in class discussions or debates. There are discussion forums, however, they lack the immediate responses from other students or the instructor. So like there's discussion board posts we can do on D2L, but obviously it's not the same as being face-to-face and getting that like immediate reaction from your professor or your classmates. Melissa Kenzig said in 2015 in one of her articles, "It is quite easy for people to misinterpret tone when interacting online. And the perception of an instructor's and classmates' tones will affect how well conducted a student feels in the online class. Being better connected with the class and the teachers helps to improve student outcomes. And these are just some of the things that are lost through online communication through school."
So just there's like personal like experience when COVID broke out and the school sent everyone home. Like I myself, I find it hard, and I'm sure for everyone else, but I find it hard to focus when I'm not in that classroom setting. So when I'm at home having to sit through a class, I'm doing other stuff or I'm not paying as much attention as I should be. But this semester as well, a lot of my professors had the options of going to in-person class or going to class on Zoom. And on the first day of classes, like everyone showed up, but then after that, like nobody really. And one time from one of my classes, everyone went on Zoom and I was the only person in class. And I felt it was kind of weird. And for people who have to like take labs, that's kind of difficult to do when you're online as well, because you can't really action or like the full experience. And so sometimes the labs just stop and you don't finish the class. Yeah.
Personally, as a nursing major, I'm worried about what would happen, say like later down the road, nobody's going to want a nurse that hasn't actually started an IV or done cares on actual patients. You know, instead of being like all virtual, like no one's going to want a nurse like that, I guess.
Yeah, and same with me too. So I'm health sciences major and pre-optometry focused there. But like Caitlin had mentioned, some of my labs had gotten canceled. And granted, it was some organic chemistry, so I don't know if I'll be really in the lab in my future mixing chemicals together, but it's still the experience of interacting and doing that. So I kind of missed out on that aspect of it. And obviously I like to just be around people and converse, as human interaction is very important, I think. So kind of for any type of major or specialty, it is hard when you're just on the computer screen. So it's been a little bit of downfall, but we have to do, I guess, thanks to COVID. All right. Does anybody have any questions, or will we save that for the end? We have our sources provided on this slide as well.
Yeah, we'll be saving the questions for the end. Thank you all very much for your for your presentation, and also for being willing to share some of your experiences. It's very interesting. Our next presentation, given that we have one presenter who may either be delayed or be unable to present due to actually COVID-related circumstances, our next presentation will be gender inequality. That'll be, well, let me let y'all introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Gabriella Bieberg, and I'm one of the presenters on this topic.
I'm Emily Johnson. I'm another presenter.
I'm Allie Rankin. I'm another one.
I'm Delaney Ehlers. I'm the last presenter on this project.
You're welcome to start sharing whenever you're ready.
Okay. Can you see the screen? All right, so the topic that we chose to present today is gender inequality, and more specifically, we're focusing on the adversities that are faced by women in the workplace. To provide you with a little bit of background, gender inequality is a prevalent issue that is faced by many individuals today. Now, this is not, it is typically a female experience, but it is not faced by women alone, but that's just the topic that we are focusing on today. So as such, women experience inequality in many different realms, and this can be in politics, in religion, and of course in the workplace. And along with these, so we're focusing on inequalities in the workplace today. There are many different areas within that topic that women are especially hindered, such as sexual harassment. So for instance, women face the hostile work environment or quid pro quo. And the three areas that we are mainly focusing on today are the glass ceiling, gender typing, and the double shift.
Okay, so the first obstacle that women face in the workplace is the glass ceiling, and as defined, it's an invisible barrier that prevents someone from achieving further success. The glass ceiling is most commonly used when trying to prevent a person from achieving a higher job position or status of power in the workplace, and the person's age, gender, and race will usually be the cause of the glass ceiling. For this instance, it's going to be gender. So along with the glass ceiling, women are often gender typed in the workplace, and gender typing is the process of women holding occupations of lower status and pay, such as like a secretary or retail position, and men really do hold jobs of a higher status and pay, such as like manager or professional positions. And women make less money than men on average because of their lower job statuses. And in some situations, women are just paid less with the same job. And while having the same job as men is, gender inequality, but it has declined in some recent years. We'll go up here. So in Benjamin Newman's journal, Breaking the Glass Ceiling, is he's described that it's going down or declining rapidly, but it's still a problem. And one of the reasons that he says is holding like women back from being paid as much as men is just men insensitivity. And so, if we work on that as a whole in society, that should help with the declining rates.
So the last form of adversity that women usually face in the workplace is called the double shift. And so women are usually, they have the highest like standard of like responsibility in the home. Like they handle all the cooking, all the cleaning, all the laundry. I shouldn't say all, but in most cases, yes. Or at least from what I've seen, yes. So after coming home from a long day at work, many women are subject to childcare and housekeeping, and the occurrence is known as the double shift. But there's also the third shift, which is just adding on to that double shift. So women will be balancing their job, their responsibilities in the home, and also a informal healthcare provider, which is basically just taking care of your spouse, your kids, and maybe your other immediate family without actually having the title of a doctor or a nurse. And that can just add on to the stress that women feel with everything that they are balancing in their life. And so like all that extra work that they face and when they return home it's just another inequality that men really do not have to face, or at least that often. You do not commonly see a man handling all that a woman does in the home.
One thing that I think is really important for everyone to know about, I think it's really important for everyone to know what gender inequality is. And a lot of people don't think that to know, but I think it is because it affects everyone in the world. It is important to be educated on this because gender inequality can affect everyone and it doesn't just affect women. This is because the prevalence of the issue, action I think needs to be taken of the effects of gender inequality. According to a blog by Patricia Dara, it's women working longer hours than men but being paid less, and I think women should be paid just as equal as men are. On the other end of the spectrum, men are expected to be the breadwinners of their families and have limited job choices due to the pressures of meeting social norms. I think that no matter your gender, everyone should just be able to get paid the same amount and like no matter what job you work in, everyone should be able to work the same job. No matter the gender, it is important for everyone to be equal, especially with their occupation and income. In today's world, many people do not realize the big difference between men and women in the workplace, and I think everyone needs to know about that. It's very important for all individuals to be informed on this issue so that they have the resources to spur change in the future. Yeah, I think just everyone needs to know about it because it's a very important topic, and us being in 2020, everyone should be equal no matter what we do or like where we work and stuff.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll proceed then to Jacqueline's presentation on supporting women's decision to go braless.
Are we okay? Hi, I am Jacqueline Provencio. I am with the Biological Anthropology Department here at USD. Thank you. So my topic, as stated by Dr. Cohen, is supporting women's decision to go braless. And I'd like to especially thank Dr. Cohen, Dr. Crimley, Dr. Sarah Lampert, and Dr. Stephanie Spars as well for their support of me. So I'm just going to get into my proposal for research. A brief history on the brassiere. It has been notably existing for civilization as dating back to Minoan civilization of 14th century BC. There has been mosaics depicted in the Piazza Armenia, and it has been viewed by Greek women during sporting events and games with more breast bands. Now, the materials of such were more of location to their region. So they would construct of either botanical or leather goods and such. So throughout the development, we go into more of a modern era. In 1889, Hermione Cadol of France had actually developed the first prototype of a bra that we see today as a two-piece girdle and garment. The undergarment named the soutien gorge. It was later dubbed by the critics as bien-être. That means for the well-being. This is obviously referring to women's bosom and support. And prototypes as such before this particular invention was notably by Henry Lesher, Luman Chapman, and Olivia Flint, who won notable for her design by the Cotton Expo and the Charitable Mechanics Association with her adaptation from a hygienic and adaptive materials in the region. So in 1930s, modern production of brassieres were in manufacturing in the Western world. And this became popular with design from new materials, since during that era, we had a metal retrieval for war production. And this was actually estimated to retrieve about 28,000 tons of metal, which could create 2 battleships of that time. So prior to, a lot of the main structure in early development was using underwiring and boning. So the scrap metal was then used obviously to war efforts, but this now became more from a utility design to a functioning and daily design henceforth. So the adaptations became involved with materials available of silk, ribbon, more flexible wiring, padding, cotton blends, as well as adding function for the shoulder straps, additional padding, hook eyelet closures, and the features of an individualized compartment for each breast. Today we see modernization with different blends of fabrics, breathability, seamless lace, no wires, and gel padding or memory foam as available. This is variations for lightweight and accessibility and adjustable for a unique fit for an individual. And also development, there has been STEM styles and fashion for athleisure, sports, and also spanning from lingerie or camisoles or bralettes. This is also an appeal to a wide variety of females throughout lifespan. And this also stems from the evolution of SSICC company. They are the creators in the 1930s that developed the letter into cup sizes that women follow today. Hence a more unique fit post a one size fits all and obstruction of women's structural anatomy. So in speaking of the gross anatomy, I'd like to regard that there are been medical and fashionable pushbacks in the community stemming from its origination. Some common concerns are restrictions limiting mobility, restraints due to respiratory issues. There are skin, muscular damage due to lack of circulation from the boning, wiring, and ill-fitted garments on the chest cavity. Skin could potentially be infected from bacteria or materials that gather wicking moisture or have the ability to obtain excess bodily fluids and direct contact. So without proper hygiene, this can leave adverse reactions onto the skin and where allergens can be present. The female bodies during adolescence and its structure are just starting to take shape, and this can be a detrimental time that can be altering a figure. Now going into post-adolescence into early adulthood, chest shape can tax the shoulders and trapezius area. However, with contour and expansion and posterior thoracic, shapewear bra does not suppress the shoulder girdle or corrective measures with the postural alignments. So these are for natural alignments and growth. So my favorite thing is actually to alleviate the tension that's been stressed on these muscles in these groups for a natural unfolding and unveiling of the natural body. With impingements on such muscles and restrictive on bone expansion as a part of the chest cavity and depreciation and deviation of the shoulder girdle, then there won't be as restriction that'll disable range of motion and no cause for ailments and disease in the posterior and anterior muscular groups. For example, your anterior and posterior latissimus dorsi, or serratus and posterior serratus. And then of course you've got your upper region, your trapezius and levator scapular. So without restriction of these muscle groups, then there's a natural alignment of opening of the chest cavity, expansion for full inhalation and breath for respiratory, for a healthy respiratory. And there would be no cause for loss of blood vessel circulation in the axillary artery region as well. So this comes from the notion that about 60% of women face that they are wearing an ill-fitted garment. As such, can depress the shoulders and cause some of these ailments into the body. Now, with a growing developing body post-adolescence, as the structure is adapting, women who find themselves in childbearing years, shape in their mammary glands and their breast size increase. And in compensation, women face more fatigue and strain on these muscular regions in the thoracic region and also in the chest cavity. From such, with the swelling of the mammary glands and the ducts days after childbirth, there's the engorgement of the breast, and the initial idea is women to wear support devices to help regulate function, of this time in their life when they are feeding infants. Now, in society and culture, I'll discuss a little bit about some of those seasonal and temperament of life bras. But for that is supposedly to alleviate any stress and strain caused by the expansion of a woman's growing body during post-childbirth. Now, into geriatric populations and women developing into older settings, we see a loss of osteodensity. So we typically see that structure that is now malaligned due to natural occurrences with gravity and loss of muscle depletion from an older population. With such, we can see that the development is stressing on the aging body, leaning more forward in motion. Now, this naturally occurs, so with or without said device, this would occur. These can be regimented through positive, obviously, muscular development and postural alignment and correctiveness. Corrective wear can still stress an aging body as opposed to a developing body. It can create a lack of muscles doing their natural work. It's been my passion and my excitement to know that your muscles have no other support, just only in females' chest cavity. And so all other muscle groups in the healthy anatomical body have supported and sustained themselves within their function throughout time and have been able to adapt throughout a lifespan. With such, I believe with older populations and women who have bared children can also develop and adapt to the evolutionary bodily functions of their chest, as well as create a strengthening process in growth and development into their own bodies that's also changing. So some of the other physical effects can be from the structural malalignment, can cause disfigurement and limited mobility. So with that lack of expansion in thoracic movement and a significant strain on muscles, then comes in potential aids, which people might insist on being a part of a reconstruction process, i.e. surgery, augmentations, and a peer pressure and culture rise of breast implantations. This is more of an ideal for an iconic body or pandering to an ideal image of what a healthy female should look like. During marketing and media, there has been a growth in the development of a female form being of such a more voluptuous and potentially fertile, depending on which region and population view it to be. In Western civilization, there has been a push for an ideal, alluring and attractive body to have a larger chest, slimmer waist, and wide childbearing hips. So with that, we'll get into some of the accessibility and marketing and sales. Companies have been implanting the image of this full-figured female. And in modern marketing and tactics, we see the visual aid to spark arousal and interest of lifestyle and behaviors of this very sexy woman with this particular shape, with revealing and tantalizing display of colors or skin, which is very racy and provocative for its time. This kind of stems into the women's liberation and sexual freedom of females. However, this is quite a multi-billion-dollar industry and had been such from the 1930s when the Warner Brothers corset company had earned $15 million for their patent, which was actually unsuccessful, but had made adaptations since and still had earned them some notable funds. Today, we see some notable brands, Victoria's Secret, Fredericks of Hollywood, Soma, Third Love. This has become a near $100 billion business in the United States alone. In European countries, we're actually seeing a depletion of their sales and revenue. It's been brought up to state that that might be coming from more of their acceptance and tolerance policies, lower economic factors, and availabilities in sales that they just do not see that they do in the United States. So as we are marketing to a wider audience with this product, you see brands like Victoria's Secret and Aerie that market to a younger age group with pink, and they are more projecting an ideal for younger women or females to wear such undergarments out in public as more of a staple piece or a statement piece, which can lead to negative normatives within fashion and have that confliction of women's particular roles. Now, with this peer pressures, and we kind of go into some of the mental setbacks from wearing or having the device of the brassiere present in our culture. With the younger audience, this can stem from an arrayment of mental disease, ailments including body dysmorphia, potential eating disorders, anxiety, as well as just genuine stress, adaptations to fitting into peer groups and social normatives. These particular groups can also shape how one feels about someone's self, just based on this overflow of images and projected onto young women of fitting into this ideal at a young age and being prevalent and readily accessible in magazines, print media, television, movies, and film. So going into some of the drawbacks from some of the of the brassiere, we kind of go back into discuss some of the feminist bra era of the women's liberation and freedom. This was potentially sparked by the Miss America protests in 1968. From the culture from the Women's United had done the Freedom Trash Can, which was written by a media analyst that women had burned in said trash can magazines, curlers, falsies, and potentially girdles. Was said that bras were included. No such actual evidence, as said by Gloria Steinman. This 1960s oppression from males, restrictive nature into women's roles and ideals, creating that sexual image, comes from more of a fashion-forward ideal of rejecting previous beliefs on what women were to be viewed as and how they should behave and look like their image icons. So with that, we kind of see that some of the writers and feminist authors were against this de-objectification. These were serving as barriers to be touched and for skin. Eliminating the bra would upheaval the patriarchy and generate male gaze. And this also re-education of young females from their training, bra state, into obviously being a culture and staple into one's wardrobe. So my goal of all this backstory and history of sharing these iconic images, you know, throughout history, there's been the cone-shaped bra in the 1960s, donned by Madonna in 1990s. This particular pin-up projection throughout media in Western civilization. Now, going in towards a revamp of education to adopt some programs, ideas, and education and techniques that have been seen overseas in Europe. There's been fantastic research in the redevelopment programs in which sex education and how males are taught to adapt and adapt to females' bodies because they're ever present. So creating a normalcy where women are widely accepted as they are, and not putting a stigma or a taboo or creating the sensationalism of these garments eliminates such, which could potentially lead to harassment or violence towards women and potentially ostracization in peer groups of females. So with the new training and education awareness, prevention programs could be created within social constructs and in schools. Implementing such ideals would create a tolerance, and social practices could really widely accept women as they are, who make up 50% of our population. So this would be a cost-effective initiative. It would promote self-acceptance and a higher esteem and self-concept. And this would be allowing further confidence in women's natural bodies, and really celebrating the changes and natural occurrences, and celebrating those pivotal points as well. So this initiative is really for a healthy anatomy, mentally and physically. And so that's what I leave you with, is to take away, is that this promotion of going without is really going within and supporting other women to be where they are and to accept naturally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent presentations all around. Now, if I can figure out how to get everything. Okay, I'm not sure if my view is everyone else's view, because I'm still only marginally used to managing Zoom. It looks like we've lost a few people. But since we've finished with the main presentations, we'll proceed to the Q&A session, or part of the session rather. So does anyone have any questions for any of our presenters? If you do, and you don't feel comfortable voicing them, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and or privately message them to me, and I'm more than happy to read them to the room. Again, don't everyone feel pressured to go at once. I will auto share, or rather I will screen share Jeopardy music if that'll help motivate people to stop the torture. Okay, I see someone's thinking. The threat of Jeopardy music. So we have a question for Jacqueline in the chat. What types of activism do you believe would be most effective? I'm not sure what that's supposed to be shorthand for. I'm sorry. With regard to bras.
So potentially with certain activism groups, I think maybe is what they're constructing that question towards. It could be a wide variety. I'm not sure of which presently exist. I only think of in historically around in the 1960s with the women's liberation movement, there were several groups that were in that initiative that protested outside for the Miss United States, and that had spun some of the authors, feminist authors and writers, and coalitions to organize such. I would say if there was a particular genre of activism groups that would be in opposition of brassieres, I think that that would be more of a modern feminist in a way of having more self-acceptance as opposed to inequality, and also being just the general foundation basis of feminism due to the equality of where we would like to see or we accept men as they are, who are also braless every day, and supporting their muscular ventures as they do without shame. And that's something I wish I had said in my presentation, but that is exactly the fearlessness that men have, I think that women would like to in their social constructs and norms and daily living. So I hope that answers your question.
I guess in the same vein, I actually do have a little bit of a follow-up question for you there. Somewhat related movement, though not entirely for the same reasons, though within the same general idea of equality. Within the past 10 years, we've kind of seen more discourse, though it's not limited to the past 10 years. We've seen movement for campaigns like the Free the Nipple campaign, arguing that men, for example, are able to go around shirtless outside whenever they want with no judgment in society. Women, of course, cannot do the same. In fact, it's a criminal offense in some areas for women to do the same. So I guess within that same vein, do you feel that form of activism in terms of some of the topless protests that we've seen, not just here in the United States, but globally, do you think that that form of activism is effective, or do you think that there's a better way, or do you think that more or less, what do you think?
My view on that, I am aware of such, and I know that there has been several protests of covering up art and things of such that were, racy and raw for their time. And with Freeing the Nipple movement, I think that potential exposure was fantastic to put out an underlying issue that was very prevalent as it is today. That there is that stigma and bias towards women. And we wonder if it comes from a potential misogyny and sexism towards women, that they are this ideal Madonna, child giving and mother of, just serving, children and things like that. They'll create this ideal of women, and they cannot shatter this puritanical vision of women. But with that movement, I do believe that some of the exposures and indecency laws were constructed. Most are be found to be a misdemeanor in the United States. In Europe, they are less offensive due to some of their public beaches and things like that. And obviously their film and art world is a little bit more liberal and less conservative than the United States. So the visualization is more prevalent there, and it is less shocking and awe than it is in the United States. So I suppose it would depend on the background. However, as we are all well aware of, sex sells, and it definitely gets noticed. So if it's getting noticed and these are completely natural, I am forward some of these initiatives and acts being present and displaying themselves and their bodies to come to the forefront and be accepted as men.
So I have a question for our second group of presenters. Our friends who are presenting on gender inequality and adversities faced by women in the workplace. Based on your research, which areas of work did you mainly focus on? And if anything, did anything surprise you? Sorry, I should preface a two-part question. Second part is, in your research, what were your findings, if any, on inequality in job pursuance and promotion between men and women?
So I'll answer the first question. One of the areas that I mainly focused on, actually, I relied on my dad for this. He works in data analytics. He works at So kind of anything with like computers and IT realm. He actually had a lot of research on that because his company was involved in a gender inequality debate, I believe. So some of the stats that I found were from that. So I believe IT would be the answer to that. And yes, a lot of it did surprise me. One stat that I found was that women on average work 32 more minutes than men. And I actually found that very surprising that the gap was so small because I thought it would be a larger gap.
All right, I wanted to make sure I didn't cut anybody off because I'm apt for doing that. So another question for Jacqueline. Love the idea of not wearing bras, but what is the stance on athletic or sports bras for women who work out often? Are those bras considered as detrimental mentally and physically for women?
I'm glad that arose. So I touched on basically very loosely some of the new conformities from utility and function, and as mentioned in Greek, and then now obviously modern athleisure wear has stemmed from the design practices and restricting during mobility. I do feel from an anatomical stance that muscular need to naturally align and move. With such, no restriction of the thoracic and cavity region would help actually promote respiration into the chest cavity, as well as I've mentioned, and having no impingements. I'm a former tennis athlete from my old college, and thinking about some of those wide motions and large and dramatic movements. And I also teach yoga and I'm a massage therapist. Seeing how the body naturally unfolds and unwinds and does things with that ease enables a healthy function. So I'm aware that some fuller figured women have some concerns about the weight of the chest cavity and movement. However, looking towards our male counterparts, they don't seem to be having that same of interest. So I do think that it would actually help promote healthy function without that support. I do fear a lot of the stigma comes from covering and said, events is really kind of what Dr. Cohen had kind of touched on, is creating a barrier of, the nipple region and the areolas, which definitely spark, like I'd mentioned before, some of the indecency that people have said that makes them uncomfortable. So I'm a proponent of letting your chest muscles do what they do naturally to allow healthy function and proper range of motion in activities and sporting events for full anatomical, just for the benefits of it, and that you can see what your body naturally does. And then also think it would be actually helpful in self-awareness of any malalignments that you would be facing if you hadn't worn them. So no impingements and no restraints might actually lead you to more further self-education. Great question.
I actually have another question. Apologize if I'm interrupting anyone who also had a question for our first group of panelists regarding difficulties of online communication. Really appreciated how you fleshed out the different concerns that students have and that you've run into, experiential knowledge during current events with respect to COVID. And I was kind of curious. So certainly one of the solutions you presented was to return to the physical classroom. But is there anything that you would like to see done on, providing that this will continue for a bit longer within the online classroom to kind of improve engagement, improve things with communication and the like to make the transition that we're still kind of stuck in more manageable.
I think for me especially, a lot of my classes, everything was optional. And so it was optional to be in class if you felt comfortable enough to, and Zoom was optional. And so that kind of created a disconnect between the whole class because there were some people in my class I'd never met. Sometimes I didn't even have to meet my teacher because it was optional to just have attendance in the first place. And so I think what helps out is when it is mandatory and that everybody has to be there, because it creates more of like an interaction between the whole class when it's not completely optional. I think that younger kids right now have a big advantage because they're growing up with technology in the classroom. My high school didn't even do Chromebooks. And so then when I got to college and then everything was online, it was a big culture shock and I'd never learned online before. So I think mainly for us in college right now, it's a lot different because we've never had to learn online. But I know like for my siblings in high school and younger, they have grown up with technology. And so my siblings enjoy online learning. So I think it's also just we've never had to do that before.
Did anyone else from the group wanna chime in, or were you satisfied with Kenley's response?
I would agree with Kenley on that, making it more mandatory for people to come, because it was similar for me too. I didn't meet probably half of my classmates like that. And for me, I like interaction. I like knowing people, but so that was just an adjustment for me. In high school, it definitely wasn't as digital either for me either. So it was just an adjustment.
I would agree with both of them of it just being a large adjustment, like compared to last year being like my freshman year. In all my classes, you know, we sat next to people. You made friends in your classes. You had those friends that, like, say you had to miss a class for something, they would, you know, help you study. They'd help share notes with you, that kind of thing. It just more like being together. Where I have friends this year that are freshmen and they're like, how did you make all your friends and stuff? And it's like, well, you know, like we met in classes, like we all sat next to each other, you know, that kind of thing. Just the large adjustment of that.
I just have a quick question regarding the online education. Since I am strictly online, I was just wondering if any of you took a class that was always meant to be online versus the quick transition, because obviously there's going to be a little bit of a hiccup and things do not move seamlessly between on campus to online. So I was just wondering if any of you had taken a class that had always been online, and if you had experienced any kind of different, well, had different experiences in quality and content and engagement.
I actually had both. I had a class I was taking this semester that was originally completely online. And when we went online, my in-person class just decided that we were basically done for the semester, no more Zoom, no more nothing. And I'll just post everything on D2L and just kind of turn everything into Dropbox as soon as you can. And so my online one was just more organized and structured because I had known our rhythm the whole time and nothing really changed. And she just kind of offered more optional Zooms so that if people were confused about something that she was available. But I know for my classes that were in person that went online, they were kind of in shock, it seemed like, because we just stopped doing class in general. And it was kind of just like read my D2L post, which for finals was really stressful because then you kind of felt like you were left in the dark with I mean, presentations or whatever that was supposed to be in person, then everything was canceled and it was just kind of cut. So I for sure saw a difference between teachers that were online were obviously prepared because the whole semester was online in the first place.
So as much fun as any student has with group projects, given the current situation, and I gathered a theme of a desire for engagement, would for courses that are not exclusively online but are more of a hybrid format where you may have a little bit less of that engagement. Would you appreciate more group work where you're working with more of your classmates, perhaps even shifting groups so that you get to meet more of your class?
Honestly, it was harder to meet up online than it was when we had in-person classes, just because online then people can make their work schedule around their Zooms and stuff like that. And so I found it harder to like find times to meet up with people and like see when people can FaceTime and stuff like that, just because when you see people in person, then you can kind of just say like right after class, let's walk to the library. But if you're not actually being on campus, I just ended up living in Sioux Falls because we went completely online. So I wasn't even there if people wanted to meet up in person. So I found it harder to meet up when semester was online.
I also agree with that. Like just making plans for like our Zoom calls and stuff. It'd be like, oh, someone wouldn't see the email until like the time we suggested. Like it'd be after the time that we suggested, and it was like, okay, like it happens. It was just very hard though to communicate that way. And last year, for some group projects, you could at the end of class, you could push your desks together and all sit and kind of brainstorm. So it was just a lot easier being face to face with each other.
Kind of going with that too, not saying that there are a lot of free riders out there, but kind of we all just do only online. People just don't kind of show up, like they don't have to because you're not in person. So I think that would be kind of hard too, because I can definitely see, not to be, pessimistic, but that could definitely lead to more kind of free riders and some group projects, I think. So that's kind of what I thought of too. It's different if you have like in-person accountability.
I would like to see more group projects and hybrid classes just to know who is in the class, and to like if I have trouble with doing homework or something, I could communicate with them and see what they think, or just to like converse with other students. I think it would be a lot better.
Karen, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to share something?
I was debating whether or not I should, but I've been teaching a course which has been face-to-face all semester that involves group work, and we have 2-hour lab sessions a week for students to work in their groups. And it was my observation that this semester, people could not wait to be out of the room. It's like as soon as like the assignment was done, instead of spending the rest of the 2-hour period working on their group projects, they were out the door and making arrangements to FaceTime or set up Google Docs or Zoom meetings instead of working together face to face. So I was having the opposite experience in my class than what you've been describing.
I must confess, prior to COVID, I had similar experiences when I would have students. I'd set aside class time, like the entirety of class time in a previous research methods class, for them to work together on a group project. And once there was no longer like a fixed requirement that you had to be there, they vanished about as fast as humanly possible. And arranged a time later, maybe to meet up at somebody's house and work on it, as opposed to having to physically stay there. So this is interesting because it provides another perspective on it, which I really appreciate. And I saw Jacqueline wanted to. I apologize. I saw you unmuted right before I started talking, so I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'd like to add to that professor's statement. I do believe, and Dr. Cohen knows this, I'm a non-traditional student, and I do think that that might stem from some of the generation gaps. Participation is traditionally in group and informal settings, direct dialogue, and having that foundation of their schoolwork creates that foundation of which comfort. Most people my age that are going back to school traditionally do like to engage and work through such, as opposed to younger students that have adapted with technology and things like of such to get results of work and teamwork and efforts pulled in. And I can definitely agree that it is easier to share files and documentations in Google Docs. However, there's something sentimental and more present with the process of outlining ideas in person. It's more organic, I would believe.
Although to be fair, in the classroom this semester, when everybody is supposed to stay 6 feet apart, having those more, should I say, intimate group interactions was challenging in a face-to-face environment. And the students had chairs with wheels, so 6 feet didn't stay 6 feet.
You mean to say that it's Alpha Auditorium does not lend itself to intimate group interactions and discussions?
I would argue that it does not, but my labs were in the active learning classroom, so Ed Delzell 110 and Old Main 305. Nice round tables and chairs on wheels and good times.
Did anyone have any other questions or thoughts? Dr. Lampert, perhaps, or Dr. Kamelis? Well, if there are no further questions, I see we went from about 20 some people down to 12 with people quietly leaving. So I don't want to keep everyone trapped here for the entire duration. Want to thank all of our presenters today for their fine work and presentations and thoughtful preparation. Of course, our questioners as well. Everyone's welcome to either provide audio claps or emoji claps at whichever you prefer. I would provide jazz hands, but I'm not good enough at them. All right, well, I'm going to pause the recording now, and we will reconvene again at 3 o'clock. You're certainly welcome to stick around. I won't close the room. I'll keep the room open, provided Zoom doesn't try to close on me. So anyone who wants to stick around and chat is welcome to, but I'm going to pause the recording for now.